In this video, we're going to talk about starting seeds at home. Starting early in the season and working your way up so you're ready for spring planting. We're gonna discuss the various possibilities. Early in the season, you have a tremendous amount of seed available on the seed racks, and it's always good to choose your seed early. Some of the seed takes a lot longer than others to be ready to be planted. And I also consider the fact that a lot of you save your own seed, and you're going to have seed that you want to seed from last year's crop. So we work with people in terms of giving them the supplies they need to get seeds started in their home. Some of the seed that you might see, I have a package of bean. It comes up really quickly, but it's kind of a fun thing if you have some beans to start for the kids to see that sprout, and just in no time at all they'll sprout. Then there's other seed like that you take more serious, your tomatoes. Some of the perennial seed, geraniums, also take a lot longer than others to be ready. So people do start them much earlier. And when you're considering starting seed, there's one of the things you need is a really good quality potting soil, and it's good to choose your soil carefully so that you're not bringing disease into it. The next step is containers. Now, there's various different liners that fit in trays, and most of the trays that you see around have perforations in them to allow moisture to transfer. But if you're working in your home and you're putting it on the kitchen counter or the dining room table, you may want to consider getting trays that have no drainage. So in that tray, you can insert a tray for support, then also put in a selection of your choice in terms of the size of the plastic trays you're putting in. I have one tray here that's filled with a soil mix that fits into a tray that protects it from its drainage. And if you have the opportunity, you can choose a greenhouse, and there's various styles of little greenhouse or coverings. They work in more than one way. They hold moisture. They allow the seed. They even have little traps on the top that will allow you to a little more air in and out. After the seed is placed in the soil, and the depth you would put the seed in depends with the type of seed. Some seeds that are really fine would be put very near the surface. Some larger seed you might want to bury with a good layer of soil over top. Once you have your seed in the trays, then you can put a little covering like this one over. Some seed will germinate in inside of a week, and other seed is going to be 2 or 3 weeks coming on. So you have to maybe you can go online and look up the amount of time required. Some seed really prefers to be pre-cooled before it'll germinate. A lot of perennial seeds would lay in the garden over the winter and then germinate in the spring. So you have to be considering that. And if you're trying to cool it, you have to be careful not to put it in the deep freeze, because it'll dehydrate it. It's just a little too cold. Maybe the crisper of your fridge would be enough to pre-cool seed that needs it. Once the seed has germinated, you may want to remove the cover. This is a great protector to get it started, but you have to be careful that you don't have them in a stagnant air movement, which might cause mold or mildew to start in the seed. And there's a disease that they talk about a lot in seeding, and it's called damp off, and it will spread through a tray of seeds just in no time. So you're really looking at having a good layer of seed, a covering to protect it at first to hold the humidity. Once that seed has germinated, then you want to give it a little bit more air movement. You have to make sure that it stays moist, but you don't want to saturate it, so it's going to stay too wet for a long period of time. So you put your seed in very carefully. That is allowing lots of space. And for the most part, people transplant seed to a larger pot to allow it a little bit more growth before it goes out, particularly like tomatoes. You transplant them perhaps as soon as they have 2 solid leaves, and you grow that plant for a time in the seed tray, and then you transplant it to a tray that has maybe 48 or 50 holes. And once you have it in these cells, you would then consider moving it up to maybe a 4-inch pot, or carrying it on. And each time you transplant it, although you break the roots, you tend to make a sturdier plant. It gets a plant that you can transplant into the garden, and it'll have a better chance. If you leave them in the seed tray, they tend to get a little soft, and eventually they can't support their own weight, and they'll just lay down on you. So there's a really nice way to just sort of track this seed with these little containers like this. And you can use your older containers. Just make sure you wash them so you're not carrying disease forward. It's really nice to recycle, but you want to be careful not to bring in fungal diseases from last season, or carry forward diseases. So you would direct seed in a container. You would plan to transplant. You would then be in a position to put it out. Now, the time for doing this has to do with how much space you have. The necessities in growing are light and moisture, a good soil mix, but also time, because if you're growing in your home and you're starting on the kitchen counter and moving to the dining room table, and and before you have a chance to get them out into the garden, all these moves are going to they're going to require space. Now, if you're one of the lucky ones that has a small greenhouse, you would probably still contend with it, because you're going to grow more than the next person. But or a nice sunroom, then that's where you're going to be able to move the seed to allow it to space. So you go to when it's free of frost in your area, count back the 4 to 6 to 8 weeks that you have the space to grow them on. Some things that grow very quickly, like marigolds and even tomatoes, if you start them too early, they're just a little too soft. So you keep records from year to year, and maybe you don't start all of your seed at one time. It's a really great idea if you're saving seed to test it. You can maybe just lay it in a layer of wet napkins or paper towels to give it enough moisture to germinate. You could try that with some bean seed, just for the kids to see how quickly they sprout, and then once you have that tested, you could test your own germination rate. If you put in 10 seeds and you've got 8 of them that germinate, you're running 80%. So the seed companies have labs where they do this on a large scale, so there'd be a germination rate supplied with most seed, and sometimes it's 100%, often it's 80%. If you've saved seed from year to year, it may drop considerably, so it might be nowhere near that amount, and that's what you may want to test some of the leftover seed from last year, see if you've stored it well and it's still viable. But the long story is that it's very enjoyable to start your seed and to have the plants in your garden be something that you've produced. So if you want to learn more, subscribe to scottsnursery.tv.